Happy Monday. Today is Monday, July 20th, 2020, and today's daily Bible readings for the Wesley Center come to us from Psalm 139, verses 13 through 18, Genesis 32, 3 through 21, Revelation. It's just the book of Revelation. It's not Revelations, but that's a old habit to get rid of. Anyway, Revelation 14, 12 through 20. Or you could have read Psalm 75 and Nahum 1, 1 through 13. Today I'm going to focus on Nahum, mainly because it's a little tiny book of the Bible and it never really gets preached on much and paid much attention to. And I think there's a reason for that. So it's long story. Let me set it up. First of all, so John Wesley, in one of his sermons, he had more than one sermon on this topic, but on the topic of original sin, he talks about, he's dealing with the concept of human wickedness. And what got me thinking about this is the line in Nahum here, which is verse 11. It says, addressing the people of Nineveh, he says, "From you one has gone out who plots evil against the Lord and who counsels wickedness." And that got me thinking about wickedness, and I started looking around about that. And Wesley has this comment, and he's kind of talking about the popular narrative of his day about human nature and what it was and what it was capable of. And basically he's dealing with a narrative at his time, and keep in mind, he's living and writing in the 1700s. And he's talking about these authors who paint a very, very rosy perspective of the greatness of human nature and human and just our potential as, basically we can't do anything wrong. And this is a long quote, but he says, "Is it any wonder that these accounts are very readily received by the generality of men? For who is not easily persuaded to think favorably of himself? Accordingly, writers of this kind are most universally read, admired, applauded, and innumerable are the converts they have made, so that now it is quite unfashionable to talk otherwise, to say anything to the disparagement of human nature, which is generally allowed, notwithstanding a few infirmities, to be very innocent and wise and virtuous." And that was kind of the prevailing narrative, and has been, and to a degree still is, until we have times like we've had recently, where we're confronted with the fact that as human beings, we might not be as awesome as we think we are. And Wesley even points that out. He says, if this is the narrative, if we're that great, if human beings are just by their nature so perfect and so amiable and so friendly and just so awesome, buddy Jesus kind of thing, he says, the very next line is, he says, "But in the meantime, what must we do with our Bibles? For they will never agree with this." And I think that's where we are with Nahum. I think that's one of the reasons, even myself as a preacher, I can't say I've ever preached from Nahum. It kind of surprises me that it's in the daily Bible readings, because it is, first of all, it's a very small book of the Bible. It's one of the smallest books of the prophets. And from what I've read on it, we're not even sure that it's, like the whole book. We think it was actually supposed to be kind of the introduction to a series of prophecies from Nahum, but we've lost that somewhere. And it doesn't help us maintain this narrative that Wesley's dealing with. The thing is that we're not as great as we think, and the Bible doesn't give us that kind of comfort. It doesn't reinforce that thought. It was never meant to be, and it doesn't do that. So Nahum, it's this little tiny book, and it shines a very uncomfortable light on human wickedness, and specifically God's reaction towards it. It's addressed solely towards the city of Nineveh. You should know that name. Remember the book of Jonah? Remember prophet Jonah, right? He was sent to Nineveh because of its wickedness. And And the book, not only does it talk about how wicked Nineveh is and what God's going to do to it and do about it, it revels in the idea, that like God's gonna lay it down and wipe y'all off the face of the map, and that's what it's all about. It's not giving any quarter that or any delusion that people are just that great, especially the people of Nineveh. And it just talks about how God reacts to that. God punishes that kind of wickedness. And it's written about the time of, probably around the time of King Manasseh, and talk about wickedness. That's one of the king of God's own people, the king of Judah. And if you're not sure what he was all about, go back and look him up in 2 Kings. You can look him up in 2 Chronicles. Chronicles is a little nicer to him, but he's a pretty wicked king. He's remembered as being one of the most wicked kings of Judah. And the way he did it is he kept peace by doing the will of the Assyrian Empire, Nineveh, rather than by doing the will of God. So Nahum doesn't allow us to kind of think we're as great as we are, and it doesn't, or as we think we are. And it really probably makes us uncomfortable because it points out how God responds to that kind of wickedness. We're not as great as we think we are, and the Bible doesn't give us doesn't give us comfort that way. The comfort it does give, though, is that it tells us that we can always change and be better. Remember the book of Jonah. That's the same Nineveh that Jonah was sent to. That book was set about 100 years before this time period. So you're talking about the 600s BC for Nahum, and you're talking about the 700s BC for Jonah. And we remember what happened in Jonah. God's comfort that he gives, the comfort that the Bible gives, is not by telling us, oh yeah, you're that awesome. It's telling us you can change, you can repent, and you can be better. Let me help you. So that's just a word about Nahum. Go read the book for yourself. It won't take you but a few minutes, and we'll be back tomorrow. See you later. Boop.